Hey guys, Trip here, and I'm giddy as a fucking schoolgirl right now. Now you may be wondering why that is. Well, I have just been reading up and learning some new stuff about the latest World of Warcraft expansion, Battle for Azeroth. Now, a lot of you may already know this, but I am a big fan of World of Warcraft. A lot of people are surprised by that, and I can kind of see why. On the surface, it's everything I tend to not necessarily complain about when it comes to MMOs, but everything I want to see us get past. It's a theme park MMO. It's very focused on raid tiers and linear progression and levels, and I've always been more into freeform, sandbox, very roleplay heavy experiences. But there's always been something about the atmosphere, something about the way they merge the gameplay with the lore, with the themes, with the art style that's really drawn me in. Now, look guys, I've played a ton of MMOs, like a lot. Like, I don't even remember the names of half the MMOs that I randomly pick up and then move on to another one. But one thing in common with all MMOs that I've enjoyed is that when I first start playing them, I'm immediately sucked into the world. I'm immediately overwhelmed with what feels like a living, breathing world, a place that's much bigger than myself, a place that will persist whether I'm there or not. And more often than not, that feeling fades over time. You know, you start to see the seams, you start to see the cracks, the world starts to feel a lot more artificial. I can't fully explain why, especially not without a script and a lot of time to think about it, but World of Warcraft is the only game I've played where that never happened, where the feeling of being a part of a real world never stopped. And honestly, that's might be the main reason why I stick with this series. It might be the main reason why I keep coming back to it. Every single time I get tired of another MMO, I always come back home, and that home is World of Warcraft. Now, I actually wrote an article about World of Warcraft shortly after the release of the latest expansion, Legion, and in it I described the evolution of WoW, at least to someone like me, as a consistent tug of war between mechanics and immersion. I feel like over the years, World of Warcraft has kind of become bogged down by its own mechanics. It's kind of gotten distracted from the core conceit of the game, at least in my opinion, which is to go on adventures, to explore, to slowly feel more powerful and feel like a more important part of this living, breathing world. And I feel like a lot of the recent expansions have gotten away from that until we got to the point of Legion, where it felt like they were finally streamlining the game in a positive way. And you know, streamlining is something I normally bash as a term, so for me to say it in a positive way is a big deal, but they were streamlining it in a positive way, and in a way that I felt brought back a lot of that flavor, a lot of the stuff that made WoW feel unique as a world. You know, things like bringing back class quests in the form of order halls, really allowing you to feel like your class matters beyond just, you know, oh, I'm gonna kill this boss with a fireball or with an arrow. No, it really made you feel like you were a unique part of the world, that you existed within the established lore of Warcraft. I also liked how a lot of the quests, particularly the class quests, were taking us back to old locations, you know, making the world feel less like just a linear slog from one zone to the next, and bringing back characters we hadn't seen for a while, resolving plot points that hadn't been dealt with in over a decade. You know, I loved the idea of, for example, going back to, what's that place called? The air elemental plane for the shaman class, for example. Like, there's all of these amazing environments and set pieces and story threads that World of Warcraft has introduced over its very, very long existence that have just been abandoned. And I've always been the type of person that has gone back to those places just for the sense of nostalgia and roleplay, and it's really cool to see them expand the story in a non-linear way like that. It makes it feel more real, more immersive, and it makes me feel more attached to the world itself. So those are the kinds of things that I like. Those are the kinds of things that have really gotten me more excited about this game over the past few years. And it feels like with the new expansion, Battle for Azeroth, we're going to see a lot more of that sort of thing. We're going to see a lot more diversity in gameplay. We're going to see a lot more options for players who, you know, yeah, like to raid, but that's not the only reason they play. They're in it for the charming story. They're in it for the role playing. They're in it for the atmosphere. So in this video, I want to go over just a few of the things that have me excited for this expansion, why I find them so exciting, and how I hope they'll be implemented in a way that really enhances the game. First on the docket are Warfronts. Now, Warfronts are part of a trend I've been noticing with Blizzard, a trend I really like, that they've been doing since, to varying degrees of success, since Warlords of Draenor. And that's this kind of self-referential way of bringing Warcraft back to its RTS roots, bringing back the idea of, you know, leading an army, being in charge of something, you know, really going to war, creating a base, just all that sort of stuff that, I mean, logically, after all our players have done at this point, we really should have been doing a while ago. Basically, a Warfront is a large-scale PvE battle, where you build your own base, command your own forces, and lead them in battle against the enemy faction. These Warfronts will be staged across numerous locations in Azeroth. Think of them as the front lines of the war. I mentioned before how I love to see Blizzard expand the story in non-linear ways, to return to locations that have otherwise been abandoned. Warfronts are the perfect opportunity to do this. Think of all the battles we've engaged in over the years. Think of all the cities and regions that have been taken by one faction or another. Think of all the zones that have been left in a decade-long stalemate. Warfronts allow Blizzard to continue these stories. Take Stromgarde, for example. This tiny, ruined city in Arathi is actually one of the most important locations in human history. Unfortunately, since WoW's leveling system prevents stories like this from progressing, Stromgarde has been stuck in limbo since Cataclysm. But the Warfront system changes this. Finally, we're going to be able to engage with Stromgarde again, to revisit this story by waging war for its control. This is what I mean by bringing flavor back. This is what I mean when I talk about merging mechanics with story. Now, I want to see the Warfront system taken even further. Just like in the original RTS games, I want my race to be taken into account as well. If I'm a dwarf, I should be able to spawn unique riflemen and tank units. Orcs should have wolf riders. Humans should have knights. According to Blizzard, this will already be the case for enemy NPCs. The race of the commander will determine the enemy mobs you'll face. Why not take it to the next level? This sort of personalization is more than welcome in my opinion. The reason I liked Order Halls so much is because it made me feel like I was shaping the story based on how I built my character. The world was finally responding to my class choice and treating me as an archmage or a dastardly warlock. In Battle for Azeroth, I want to feel like my race matters and that my choice will bring something slightly new to the table every time. Now let's talk about the other big feature of Battle for Azeroth. Now, this is something that a lot of people probably don't really care about, especially if you're not a nerdy role player like me, but I have been one of the people that has been advocating for, begging for, demanding WoW to add more customization options to our races, particularly to allow us to pick certain sub-races. You know, different variations of orcs, you know, different orc clans, or different dwarven clans, or different troll tribes. I've been asking for this sort of thing for years, and honestly, I've been one of many. And Blizzard is finally giving us this option in the form of allied races. Here's what we know so far. There's going to be at least 8 allied races in Battle for Azeroth. For the Alliance, there's Void Elves, Lightforged Draenei, Kultiran humans, and Dark Iron dwarves. For the Horde, we're getting Maghar orcs, High Mountain Tauren, the Nightborn, and Zandalari trolls. Each allied race gets the full treatment, with unique skills, emotes, voice acting, and apparently even faction hubs. Each race is unlocked through gameplay, either through reputation or through a unique quest line. Once you unlock them, allied races start at level 20, and when they reach level 110, they're given unique cosmetic heritage armor. Now, you may be wondering why any of this matters. I mean, ostensibly, WoW is a game about killing monsters and collecting loot. Why should we care about anything else? Well, let's be honest. Killing monsters isn't enough for everyone. I say this all the time, but people play games for different reasons. Sure, a lot of people rush to the end game so they can raid with their friends, but others want a more diverse selection of activities and experiences. With allied races, Blizzard is finally throwing a bone to large, often neglected segments of the community: role players, lore fiends, and collectors. It's great to see Blizzard embrace the fact that WoW is about more than raid tiers and gear drops, and I hope this philosophy continues into the future. But Battle for Azeroth has another feature I really want to talk about, something that, if done right, could possibly be my favorite thing they've ever added to World of Warcraft. I'm talking about island expeditions. Now, the only thing I really dislike about World of Warcraft is probably the same thing I dislike about all games that are similar to it, and that's how static the world feels. I talk about this a lot on the channel, but I'm a big fan of dynamic content, especially in RPGs and especially in MMOs. I want to feel like I'm having a unique experience. I want to feel like I'm witnessing something slightly new every time. And that's where Island Expeditions comes in. Island Expeditions are 3-player scenarios that allow you to discover and explore procedurally generated islands. The goal here is to seek out Azerite for your faction, as well as hidden treasures scattered across the landscape. Each island will be inhabited by a different faction or group of factions. On one island, you may come across a village of friendly Hosen fishermen. On another, it could be a stronghold for the Naga, or a refuge for violent elementals. Different events may occur on the island as you explore it, and it's possible that NPCs from your opposing faction will appear as well. Apparently, the enemy AI works a bit differently on Island Expeditions. Now, supposedly, enemies will be much smarter, and they'll use the island itself to their advantage. There aren't a lot of details on this yet, but I think the goal here is to give PvE players a sense that they're fighting living, thinking enemies, as opposed to mindless, repetitive trash mobs. It all goes back to providing a dynamic, unpredictable experience. So these island expeditions come in 3 difficulty modes, including a special PvP mode where the player will face off against actual players from the opposing faction. All in all, this sort of thing is what I love most in video games. This idea of seeing something new, that feeling of going on a real adventure. When done right, this is what keeps an MMO from feeling stale. This is what maintains that feeling of immersion, grandeur, and mystery that I look for in MMOs. Now, to be fair, I have to say I'm more than a bit cautious about this. Procedural generation is kind of a double-edged sword. When done well, it provides the player with infinite, unique experiences. When done poorly, it quickly becomes a repetitive, boring slog. As excited as I am, I feel like this feature has the greatest potential of being a total clusterfuck. It all depends on how Blizzard approaches it, and how committed they are to making each island feel unique. Either way, I'm always up for a new game mode, and I'm looking forward to what Blizzard does with this. So yeah, if you couldn't already tell, I'm pretty excited for Battle for Azeroth. If you've been a part of the Psychotrip community for a while, you'll probably know that I can be very cynical when it comes to RPGs and MMOs. I'm more than willing to call out Blizzard's bullshit when I see it, but ever since Legion really clicked with me, I've been back on the Warcraft bandwagon. If Battle for Azeroth can deliver on these promises, if these features are as engaging as they seem, then count me in. So what do you guys think about Battle for Azeroth? Is there anything I missed that you'd want me to talk about? What do you think of this expansion so far? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, that was just something that was on my mind. Hey guys, Trip here. If you liked that video, why not watch some more? Hit that like button and make sure to share this video on Reddit and social media. Have you ever wanted to wear my face like a grizzly pelt? Well, check out Rage On. There you'll find all sorts of Psychotrip merchandise to satisfy your grim needs. As much as I love YouTubing, I also like food. Together, we can satisfy both my needs. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.